The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So, while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Meemaw and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Hello, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome to bout number 143 of Cinesmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom 2 Weeks Haggis.
Do you really expect me to keep reassuring you sexually, Mike, now that we completely discussed each other?
Second, writer, actor, and director Kyle. I definitely advise skipping the fish course fine.
I feel personally attacked by the fat realtor in this movie who runs like I do and eats like I do.
Third, filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short Productions. This is it. You duck fart. Roald.
Yeah, these movies really make me want to go buy another house.
Fourth, filmmaker and owner of Arizona Ink Studios. Andrew. I should have seen her toes in the pit of my crotch as a cry for help. Zoomwalt.
Oh my God.
Oh, well done. All right, poke the monkey.
Ladies and gentlemen, thief partners and cantankerous companions, welcome to the main event. Tonight, two stories of struggling spouses tangle to maintain their sanity and secure a victory. Which will reach the top stair triumphantly, and which will crash to the cellar below. In the first quarter, from 1986, written by David Giler, directed by Richard Benjamin, starring Joe Mantegna, Shelley Long, and Tom Hanks. The Money Pit! In the second quarter, from 1989, written by Michael Leeson, directed by Danny DeVito, starring Danny DeVito, Michael Douglas, and Kathleen Turner. The War of the Roses!
So surprisingly enough, one of these films, The Money Pit, was actually a true story based on my first house. And the second movie I had never seen. I had never seen War of the Roses until I watched it for this. Because I remember as a kid, I knew Romancing the Stone, Jewel of the Nile, right? And whenever we would see the VHS in the rental store, I would be like, can we get this? Because they're funny, you know, remembering Jewel of the...
Yep.
And my mom and dad are like, no, it's not for kids. And then I just never watched it until now. But I was pleasantly surprised. I actually really enjoyed it.
It's the third movie in that series.
Yeah, essentially it is.
Later in their life.
Yep. All right. Let's start everything off. First round. Writing.
So, oh, that's not me. Go ahead. Sorry, Andrew, I can barely hear you. Sorry. I thought you were pausing for me.
You do sound pretty quiet, Andrew.
Yep.
Okay. I know I backed up because I was laughing. I didn't want to kill Mike.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So the writing on these films is kind of fascinating. These films are the same movie with different outcomes intertwined in between them. And I find it very, very fascinating that the symbolism for both movies comes across so strongly. As I go through this, we're going to talk about the writing from when it was done versus the lens that we look through now, because I believe that makes a complete difference in the way the movies come across. So the symbolism is the obvious one with the house. And we see in the money pit as the house with this relationship all kind of in broken pieces. It comes in and it's this magical thing. And then things start slowly falling apart. Things get breaking. Things start wearing on you. And we finally end up all the way to the end where everybody ends up in a happy ending and the house is beautiful and gorgeous and all put back together. In the War of the Roses, you have the extreme opposite, but you have the same house telling the same story. You have this beautiful, gorgeous house. You have this couple that's married with kids and everything is great and grand, and things slowly start moving downhill. And as they do, the house kind of crumbles with them until their ultimate demise at the very end. And it's fascinating that both of these movies chose to use a house to represent the love and the relationship part of this. So real quick, because we could probably talk a while about this, but when these movies were written, a lot of the jokes, a lot of the physical comedy, a lot of the gags that go on that you still chuckle at are very much of the time. There are things that you see that you're like, oh, that's pretty funny. If I'm looking at it from that time period, I would say, in your 80s era, you look at a lot of the things that they do, the gags and such, and you go, yeah, that's actually pretty funny. Haha, and look at this and look at that. Now, fast forward to today, and there's a lot of things that would be police actionable, that are physically violent, that really aren't funny per se if they were to happen in real life. I mean, there's some physical abuse. There's actually, attempted killing each other. We won't even talk about the contracting and how much there would be actually probably a huge lawsuit. But it's fascinating to go from the 80s and watching a movie and seeing this themed story wrapped around a relationship that is told by the condition of the house in both movies, and seeing all of these funny antics and things that go on that make you laugh, to today where you watch them and go, okay, interesting. So there's some funny lines. We talked a lot about some of the lines earlier when Mike was introducing us. There are some pretty funny things. In War of the Roses, one of the things that always stuck out with me is the pate moment when she offers him pate. He eats it and he's like, anybody that makes pate this way, there's no way. And she goes, it depends on where the pate came from, and leans over and says, wolf, inferring to his dog. And then, in Money Pit, the comical line that I think has been a takeaway from Money Pit for years. I know we say it at work. I know other people have said it to me. It's 2 weeks, because everything, it's 2 weeks, even though months later, 2 weeks. And just all of the crazy stuff. I mean, one of the best comedic scenes I would say in the movie is Tom Hanks spending an entire day in a hole trapped in a rug. And that entire moment, well, I don't want to give any trivia away, Mike, if you have any, but there's a lot of that scene that was Tom Hanks just being Tom Hanks. Now, he was young at the time, but he was kind of a goofy little character. So there's some pretty neat ideas that came across, but mind's eye changes over the years. So that's where I'm going to start. I'll throw it to you guys and see if you had the same, I guess, shift, because I thought that was fascinating for myself.
In watching it this time, now that, I'm married and 30 years older, I guess I don't really understand what Walter did wrong. Like, they got into this fight, and I know that there's times when people get into a fight and one person didn't really do anything wrong. But, she, confessed in the middle of the night. He was clearly asleep, and then he blows up at her, which, under the circumstances, it wasn't, I mean, it was warranted. So I guess that was
justified.
It was justified, because he didn't do anything wrong. She cheated on him, and he's entitled to get mad about it. So that was one of the things that I just thought was a little odd. I'm curious what you guys thought about the Danny DeVito, the framing mechanism that the writers used by putting, Danny DeVito introducing it, and kind of almost like a fable or storybook hour, and how that worked in War of the Roses.
Yeah, normally narration is bad. Sorry, Gabe.
That's okay.
It helps that he's in the movie. I think that adds to it a bit.
Yeah, it feels like he's telling a memoir.
It kind of felt noirish, right? Because it's almost like a private detective meeting with someone.
I would agree.
Yes. And it's
rather
filmed
than
that way, which we'll talk
a lawyer.
about later.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting what you say about the house as a framing device. That makes a lot of sense when you watch the movies. We'll get to this in acting, but man, I tend to feel that in these situations, it's not like, two parties are equally responsible for everything falling apart. There are definitely some imbalances on who is responsible for some of the crazy shit going on in these movies. And I kind of got in a conversation with my wife about this, and I don't know if it's one of those things that bears out, like, it's different if you're the male partner or the female partner, how you view these movies. And maybe that's intentional. I don't know. But it was interesting to watch it and think about, like, man, she really is acting crazy or acting strange. And I don't know why he's getting all this guff, and I don't know, I might have to re-explore that with, like, am I viewing it that way because I'm the man and that's how I think of things. But I really think Kathleen Turner was pretty crazy in the second movie. I started wondering if I was watching
Fatal Attraction.
Fatal Attraction, yes.
Yep.
I was like, is this the wrong movie? Am I thinking of the wrong movie? Because she really was just acting kind of nuts out of nowhere. And I was like, I don't know what to think about that. But yeah, it's an interesting, they're using a physical space to portray what's going on in their relationship.
One of the things I thought was interesting is the so in Greek theater, you define a comedy and a drama whether or not the character learns anything, and War of the Roses really feels like a tragedy, because they, they're selfishness and narrow-sightedness winds up killing them. But then you have Danny DeVito at the end, telling his wife how much he loves him and going off. And so you do have one character, and that's like classic Greek theater, is the two main characters die, and then one of the characters learns from their mistake and improves their life. Which I thought was, I thought that was a kind of a pretty cool stroke. They were able to add some weight to it, because I think without Danny DeVito's character learning that at the end, you get a pretty depressing movie.
Well, and you also
even more so.
You also end up with a guy that is in Danny DeVito's office looking to get a divorce himself, and him deciding, it's probably not worth it, and realize, he also himself, I think, has an ideological shift in his mindset as well. Which is really good because that was Dan Castellaneta, and
Homer.
It was 1989.
Yeah,
so he decided to go back, and which was great because that was the first year The Simpsons were on. So,
oh my God, that guy was about to be.
There'd be no.
That guy was about to become so rich, and he had no idea.
and he does the little gag with his shoes at the beginning, which I thought was very clever. You also have to. I guess we kind of brush on it a little bit, but in Money Pit, there's a definitive break of, of infidelity. Whereas in War of the Roses, there's this, we've kind of broken off and lost touch because of we're doing our own things. We're slowly becoming to live our own lives. And so the split happens because we've lost the actual relationship part of it versus an action that either one of them directly did to the other, which I thought was interesting as well. Sorry, Gabe, you jump in, man. You've been.
Well, I just wanted to touch a little bit more on the Danny DeVito as kind of the narrator thing too, because I thought that was kind of an interesting device, and it made me wonder at some point if the Roses were real people. Or if this was just a story that Danny DeVito told to certain people. The counter argument to that is like, why would he tell someone who's in his office going to pay him $400 or $450 an hour or whatever he said, for a divorce? Why would he try to drive him away? But it also kind of made me wonder if this was just really just a story that he would tell, and if they were actually real or not. Because it seemed awfully extreme, for them to go through all that and die the way they did, and be so awful and bitter to each other. So it was just, I thought it was an interesting device, and I think it was Kyle that said earlier too. It is very, very reminiscent of a noir film of. And so it made sense. He did almost come across as more of a private detective than an attorney at times when he's doing his narration. So that's all I wanted to say.
I think they were real, especially because Sean Astin, he just got all that money from One-Eyed Willie and left his other family, and had to go and put help Frodo put the ring in the volcano, but. I don't know if I don't know. It felt like he was perhaps, when you tell a story, the embellishment that you come across, but it felt, at least the way that it was portrayed and came across to me, was that he was actually like dictating that, he'll be a lawyer, but you really need to think about a divorce, because, he uses the reference of the cigarette, and how he would, if he never smoked it, he would never smoke again. And it's sad that he made a special box for it and everything. And then Kathleen Turner came in, and that flipped the switch.
That makes me think when you say that, is Danny DeVito an unreliable narrator? Because he had a lot of information that he should not have.
Yes.
There's no way he should know the actual contents of these fights, right? Like,
correct.
It's kind of interesting now that I think about it. I may have underestimated this movie. I think Tom's mention of it being based on a Greek tragedy, although maybe it just really wasn't done well.
Well, I'm sure that even if you did, you probably would throw some embellishments things in there as well. But I'm sure that there's things that he did find out and learned about based on information that he was talking to both of them, I would guess.
You know, I guess I take so little joy out of War of the Roses. It wasn't fun to watch it. And the comedy in it it's so mean-spirited, and I like when they're calling each other names and stuff. And I mean, I get that they're playing that for laughs and the shock of the pet dying. And I just, I don't know. It would be weird for me to be at a point where I was like, oh, I want to invest to make a movie like this. I got so little joy out of it. And that was, maybe that's partially to what I was alluding to at the beginning, is that the mind's eye of where you are in life and also in the time that we're in, it changes the perspective of I'm going to use the word funness of the movie. Whereas like Money Pit, I could say is closer to being timeless in that story, because it was something that potentially could happen today, and it still has funny antics that aren't like offensive or off-putting, like what you say, Tom. So maybe.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Tom there. There were a few times I was taken out of it, and I'm like, oh, this shouldn't be labeled as a comedy. It should be labeled as a dark comedy, because it is.
Yes.
And if you label
but even
it
dark
as,
comedies make you laugh, right?
and there were actually some points where I laughed, but it wasn't. I mean, the whole dinner scene, the whole coming in. That's the fun.
I think
that's
the funniest
pretty funny
scene in the movie.
And running over the car and everything. That's pretty funny. But some of the other stuff, I'm like, oh my god, I couldn't imagine doing that to someone that I used to love, or that I actually cared for at one time. So that bugged me.
This is that moment in time. See, this is why I think it's a different movie, because of our ages.
No, that's and the time that
and
we
our
live
experience,
in. Right?
And our experience, because looking at it in the 80s, some of that stuff you would see that in those kind of antics in other movies that are similar, when you had husbands and wives fighting, and people are like, it's the 80s, ha ha, and it's different now. And it definitely struck me differently. I didn't enjoy it as much as I remember when I was younger, watching it, being like, "Ooh, I really liked War of the Roses. It was super funny." Versus now,
right.
It's fascinating.
I feel like the 80s were also a time of contentious divorce being in the news all the time. You don't see that nearly as much now.
Sure,
that was such an 80s thing.
Sure, and the Money Pit was safe on the fact that they weren't even married.
Right. Yeah.
They were just technically living together, and at the very end they finally got married. Again, symbolism there with the house got put together. So, but yeah, I know we're way over. It was just really fascinating to really look at the scripts and really jot down the differences that I appreciated when I first saw these movies versus now. Was quite a bit different. So,
all right, let's put it to a vote. Andrew,
I'm going with Money Pit.
All right, Kyle.
Oh man, I have some problems with the structuring of Money Pit. I think it's kind of the same thing over and over and over again until it hammers you to death. So just for trying, I'm going to go with War of the Roses.
Okay. Gabe?
I think it's funny that we talked to almost zero about Money Pit. We talked about War of the Roses almost the entire time, which makes me inclined to vote for War of the Roses, but I'm not, because I'm with Tom, and I really got very little joy out of it, even as we recognize these devices that they used. So I'm going to go with the Money Pit.
All right. And Tom?
And I'm also going to go with the Money Pit.
Okay. Screenwriter Lowell Gans and Babalu Mandel wrote an uncredited draft of the Money Pit script. but in the film's original trailer, they were credited along with the film's writer, David Giller. And apparently it's because of DGA rules that they were taken off. Appearing in The War of the Roses as Dr. Hillerman was actor Michael Adler, who was the son of the film's source author, Warren Adler, who wrote the War of the Roses novel. That's about all I could find about anything in the writing for either film. Let's move on to our second round, which is acting.
Acting, yes, indeed. I'd just like to point out that I'm glad there are people in the world named Babalu. That's pretty awesome. And it makes me feel like Kyle is a very stupid name. Acting. Boy, oh boy, Money Pit stood out to me right away because how young was Tom Hanks? Is this pre-Big even? Is this before he had his breakout in Big? I don't know, because he looked so young. And there really are not a lot of known actors in the Money Pit, save Shelley Long, who I almost called Shelley Duvall a bunch of times, and then Tom Hanks. And to show you how far my face blindness goes, the maestro, who I said that's the guy who played the demon in the second Ghostbusters. It, of course, is not. That is not Vigo.
No.
That is...
It looks like him.
That is one of the bad guys from Die Hard.
Yes.
Yep.
He can barely speak English. It's very distracting. And then you got Body by Jake at one point, if anybody remembers those infomercials. And then there was another famous actor in there somewhere, the guy who was Body by Jake's buddy, but I don't know his name. So the acting really falls on the shoulders of Tom Hanks and Shelley Long. And Shelley Long is like the straight man in this movie, but she's very confusing. Her emotions are on like one of 3 or 4 settings that she just vacillates between. Her actions and her motives and things like that don't really make much sense. I guess you could kind of say the same for Tom Hanks, except for he's supposed to be like a dumbstruck lover. And maybe the 80s was also the time of being very forgiving of infidelity, because that is the weirdest conversation about potential cheating I've ever seen in my life. I don't know. The acting is, but I will say this, Tom Hanks is enjoyable to watch. He's fun and funny, even if this is nowhere near his best work. He is charismatic, and, you know, he fills up the screen, and he's at least interesting to watch. He makes some weird choices. Andrew parodied The Laugh, which I think is straight out of Revenge of the Nerds. A crazy choice. But some of his improv and physical stuff, like his physical stuff in this was really big and kind of over the top in places. But it was kind of fun. War of the Roses, much more seriously acted movie. You got Kathleen Turner, Danny DeVito, Michael Douglas, people I would say, if you had me categorize them, I would say these are good actors, fine actors. Dan Castellaneta showing up and looking so young. It's weird to think that he ever looked that young. But man, the acting in that movie is so over the top in places with how angry and vicious they get with each other, seemingly out of nowhere. I don't know what Sean Astin is doing in the movie. And it's almost like a Griswold Family, where you're like, hey, that's one famous person, and then the other child, because they're like, who is this other person? But I don't know. The acting was so kind of over the top, but much more serious and grounded than the Money Pit. So it's kind of apples and oranges when you compare them. I'd say no one's really like doing a bad job, but if you're looking at acting that reeks of the 80s, it's the Money Pit. It's just so like of another generation. Not that it's that much better in War of the Roses, but yeah.
Yeah, fun fact. So Alexander Godunov, the maestro, and Wilhelm von Homburg, who plays Vigo in Ghostbusters 2, they were both on Hans Gruber's crew in Die Hard.
Oh,
they were. Oh,
he was. Vigo was on the crew too.
So
that's probably why you
separation to Vigo.
There you go.
That's crazy. Yeah. I Heather was like, "You're crazy. That is not Vigo." And I was like, "That is Vigo. I know that's Vigo." And I looked up, I'm like, "Of course not. Of course it's not."
And he was only like 36 when he did Money Pit.
Boy, howdy.
Exactly. God knows, like,
Wow.
I watched that and I'm like, no, he's older than me. Like, no, man, he's like 10 years younger than you.
Hard living in the 80s. Hard living.
Yeah, he died young too. So.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way that Kyle does about Tom Hanks. It's certainly not his best work by any means, but there's just something so charismatic and charming about him. He's really fun to watch. He seems very genuine at all times, and so he really makes it entertaining to watch. It's not going to be one of his Oscar-worthy performances, but for War of the Roses, I like Danny DeVito and I liked his presence in the movie, but I felt at times like, especially when he was kind of telling the story in his office, that it was almost like he was reading off of cards. I felt his delivery wasn't very convincing, and I think that was maybe not his best performance. I think he's improved since then. But as far as the rest of the acting goes, I mean, I think most of the acting is suitable for these movies. You know what I mean? We're really not getting into award territory here, but it works. It works in the context, I guess. I don't know.
I think, I mean, Tom Hanks' career is incredible. I mean, to look at where he's at now and that from Money Pit to where he is now, and I mean, he's one of the most celebrated actors of all time. And, God, he did slapstick comedy so well back then. Yeah. The couple scenes with the electrical fire in the kitchen and the fetching the water scene. I mean, he was comedic genius. I mean, Buster Keaton worthy. And I just love him for it. The thing with War of the Roses, that this is kind of where I landed on this. Having seen Romancing the Stone, and I love Romancing the Stone, and Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner have such great chemistry. It's no wonder they made 3 movies together. When I watch War of the Roses, I don't buy it. I know they're both great actors. I know they're very good, but I've seen them have really good chemistry, and I've seen them, that spark. And so when I watch War of the Roses, it's so hard to buy in, because I know that in real life they love each other, and I'm never able to let that go. And I know how much they loved working together, and it's hard. I can't get past that. I can't take them out of their, Romancing the Stone box and see them play these 2 horrible, vicious people going after each other. And it's just not. And I think it's a credit to how much chemistry they have that I can't buy into this attack on each other. And I don't think I'll ever watch War of the Roses again, because if I ever want to see Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas together again, I'll throw on Romancing the Stone, because it's fucking amazing.
So, yeah, it's not great examples of these actors working together. I totally agree with you there.
I mean, even, throw Danny DeVito in that pool, because, he's in those movies as well. Do you think that Danny DeVito suffered a little bit, and I don't want to cross too far, but suffered a little bit in his acting because he was directing at the same time?
I wondered about that too. Yeah. If it was a Ben Affleck thing, where it's like, dude, pick a side of the camera, because I don't really know if you can do both. I think that's legit.
I think it would be hard. It would be hard to kind of judge your own acting if you were directing.
Sure.
Like to actually say, oh, that was a good performance, or it wasn't, or you'd have to have somebody there that you trusted to let you know, and you'd be thinking probably about, oh, the lighting, or the camera,
the next
position,
shot
or whatever.
I gotta set up.
Yeah, instead of actually focusing on your part.
I mean,
so
we've all directed. I mean, I think you have to have a certain sized ego to pull that off, and then to step in front of the camera and be too, like, do you also have the ego enough to take criticism from people who, if they're on the set, they're below you, you know? Could you do both? And I don't know. There's not a lot of people that can do it. I've always wondered if Ben Affleck can. There's only a couple movies where he's able to do it, so he's gotten better.
Yeah, and you're right. With Tom Hanks, he was so good, especially in the time, doing a lot of that slapstick comedy in his early stuff, you know, from Bosom Buddies, The Splash. I mean, he does a ton of just goofy stuff. And then, of course, you know, we get into some probably more of the notable things with Your Big and The Burbs and Turner and Hooch and Joe versus the Volcano. I mean, all of those just basically lined up, and he was just one right after another. And he was playing this fun-loving, goofy guy. And I think that's his stardom just kind of started going more and more, and it became a freight train because, you know, in the 80s, holy buckets, he made 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 movies. In 1980, between 1984 and 1989, he made 14 movies. That's insane.
You know, it's crazy. Sometimes I think now, like, man, they put The Rock in everything. They put Dave Bautista in everything. And maybe they do make more than that. But yeah, Tom Hanks is averaging more than one movie a year. Like, that he was hot, right? And he's one of those guys that's been hot his whole career since he broke.
Right. And I would say that he's really never, I mean, I think he's choosable to his movies to where he is picking roles that he's like, yes, I want to play that role, or yeah, that's interesting. Then, you know, it's chance that he was just doing stuff, but he was just so damn good at it. You put him
less
on
so
the
when
screen.
He was younger, right? Like the further back you go, some of the movies get worse and worse. Yeah.
Right. But that's my point. You know, he was just doing stuff because people are like, he's awesome to, like, you know, I think Tom said the Buster Keaton. He's just charismatic. He's goofy on string. He is fun to watch. People gonna go see that movie. That movie.
Yeah. He's so likable and charismatic. And the scene where he goes out and he finds out we have weak trees. You know, in the beehive, you know, there's no insects there, but he is moving so crazy with his head, and he increases it in just the right amount of intensity as it's getting worse and worse. That's really funny. Like, it's really well done.
Even his take after he falls off the chimney and somehow survives and ends up in the pool, and the little statue starts peeing on him. The take of his face and his body language is just it's perfect. It is absolutely perfect. I would say that I kind of agree a little bit with the War of the Roses with Michael Douglas just feeling uber stiff. Like, he was still playing the tough adventurer that he did in Romancing of the Stone and Jewel of the Nile. And like, even like when they, at the very beginning, when they kind of show him meeting for the first time and in town, and like, he just seemed like I would not want to hang out with him. He seems like he would just be an ass. So I don't know if it was just, he's not good at playing the romantics in that way. I don't know. It just seemed very weird. So I have to agree a little bit with that. And then Kathleen Turner, whew, don't piss her off.
Is Michael Douglas the man who has been most abused by women in movies?
Maybe
Fatal Attraction, Disclosure, War of the Roses. Those are just the first three I think of.
The Game.
Basic Instinct?
Yeah.
Was he in Basic Instinct? Yeah, he gets kicked around.
Yeah, what is it about him that women just want to slap him around?
He does have this.
He exudes power.
He does have this smugness about him a little bit. There's always this kind of cockiness or smugness to his characters, or often is. But in most cases, it's actually a good quality for that character. You know,
he plays it well.
Yeah, he's good at it. Yes. He's one of those actors that I think over the years I've grown to like more and more. I remember being in the 80s and 90s, I'm like, I don't like Michael Douglas. But I'm growing to like him. Although he's got to start aging at some point because the Ant-Man movies are starting to scare me. The way he looks.
He's awesome.
Well, his dad didn't.
Oh,
really.
Forever,
Not
and then all of a
until-
sudden
not
his
until
dad
the
was
stroke.
really old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
102.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Amazing though.
I want those jeans.
Yeah, no kidding. I would settle
I'll
for
take
a
Mhm.
divot in my chin to live that long.
Yeah, do you think people would think if Michael Douglas was born now and acting now, would people think he's classically attractive? Or is it just kind
Yeah,
of
I
an
think so.
80s thing? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
It's the voice. I think that it's the voice.
He's got a great voice.
He does
It's
have
very
You know,
distinct. Very
You know who
Damn.
doesn't have a great voice is Shelley Long.
No,
Oh,
no,
boy,
I won't let you go there.
All right.
I do
Time.
love that Tom Hanks screechy voice in Money Pit. Like every time I hear it, I'm like, oh, it's Woody the Cowboy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wanted
yeah.
to. Yeah, I wanted to try to replicate that, but I can't do it. Yeah, Andrew did a good job with the laugh, but I couldn't do his high pitched kind of squeaky voice like when he's trying to tell her that he's in the ceiling. I'm up here behind the
Oh,
I'm
gosh.
behind the chair or whatever.
That was kind of infuriating when she's like, "No, you're not." I was like, "God damn it, lady, look behind the chair. You've been here
Voice.
all day." Who walks into a room and says, "You're not in here," after looking for 1 second? Oh, he should have wore a rose at her. I don't know. Is that
I always
Uh-oh.
felt bad
War
because
of the Roses.
I was worried that he had to go to the bathroom while he was in there.
Oh,
Oh,
he
sure.
pissed
I'm
that
sure.
rug.
Yeah.
Yeah, he pissed that rug.
Okay, boys, it's time to put it to a vote. Kyle.
Oh, don't make me go first. Man, Tom Hanks is really good in the Money Pit, but everybody around him, I think, is much, much worse. So I'm going to go for War of the Roses.
Wow. All right. Gabe.
Yeah, I think I have to go with Tom Hanks in The Money Pit.
All right. Tom.
I think Shelley Long is fucking awesome, so I'm gonna go with Money Pit. I love her. I'm sorry.
Shelley Long
Andrew?
is awesome.
I love her. She's great. Shelley Long is awesome.
Andrew.
She's part of the team.
I'm going with Money Pit. Got to go with the Hanks.
All right. Kyle, by the way, you were thinking of Nestor Serrano.
Yes.
Yes.
Good pull.
But
yes.
you also forgot about Yakov Smirnoff is in
How?
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know how.
And
I
Joe
yelled it
Men-
out during the opening credits because in typical 80s fashion, this movie has credits where they list every fucking person in the movie.
it. And Joe
And I was
Mantegna.
like,
Yeah, Joe Montana.
yeah, Joe Montana. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm so wrong. Money Pit was star-studded.
I do have to agree with Kyle though. Shelley Long drives me nuts, but I can actually
What?
stand her in this movie.
Oh, she's so fucking good in this.
And I like her in this movie, but as a fan of Cheers and having rewatched Cheers recently during the pandemic, she had some good moments, but otherwise just she was really good at you not liking her, right? And I think that maybe that's what she was going for. I don't know, or it's just Shelley Long.
Nestor Sotorano sounds like a hot sauce.
Yes, it does. All right, let's go to our third.
Pedro Serrano was the Cuban guy in Major League.
Up your butt,
Yes, he
Joe
was.
Boo.
Up your butt,
Liam.
Joe Boo.
How's the
And then-
peepee? How's the peepee, Liam?
All right, third and final round, or third
What?
third round.
No.
No, we have
Sweet.
4 rounds. Oh my
What?
God,
Short
Trivia?
show tonight.
third round.
No
directing.
trivia?
Oh,
Money Pit
yeah.
by
Oh my
TKO.
God.
We got you
Don't
all
take after
messed
me,
up.
Mike.
Guess what?
Get it together.
The pain pills are hitting. While shooting the scene where Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner are sitting in the chandelier, director Danny DeVito pretended to break for lunch while the two actors were 30 feet above the ground. That sounded like a Danny DeVito thing to do.
Yeah,
Kathleen.
but 30 feet above the ground to him.
Right. That's pretty high up.
I don't endorse that comment.
Kathleen Turner was considered for the female lead in The Money Pit. At the time, Turner was in a dispute with 20th Century Fox as she did not want to do The Jewel of the Nile and tried to use the offer of playing in this movie as a negotiating ploy, although some thought at the time that it was simply an attempt to get paid more money.
Shit, she would have been good in that.
She would have. And by the way, something that stuck out at me, and I don't know what this says about me, but you see her nipples a lot in the opening of the film.
In the opening?
Yeah,
why
is she?
Oh yeah, and at the end. Yep. But it's bookended by Kathleen Turner's nipples.
Weird.
Can I change my vote?
weird connections between
Kathleen
these
Turner
two
is
movies.
awesome.
Weird.
Her nipples are awesome.
All right, come on. Third round. We have one more to go after this. I've checked my notes. Third round, directing.
Well, Danny DeVito, I was actually surprised. I had seen The War of the Roses when I was younger. I don't recall what my feelings were about it at the time. But when Danny DeVito's name came up as the director, I was surprised. I did not recall that. I did not look that up before I watched it. And so that kind of piqued my interest a little bit to see how he would do as a director. And I feel like his direction was competent. And we touched on it earlier. He really tried to make it feel like a noir film. And I think he succeeded in that in many ways. Not only from the kind of the narration that we talked about, where he's, telling the story at the beginning in his office, almost like a detective's office, but also in things like the lighting and the camera angles and that kind of thing. There are certain scenes. There was one that was a little bit distracting to me because I feel like Christian Bale would have freaked out and yelled at somebody for moving a light. Because there's a scene with Kathleen Turner where it's very noirish and there's this light. There's like this band of light across her eyes. And it totally made me think that this is totally film noir. And a lot of the shots are very dark, very starkly lit, from harsh angles and those kinds of things. And she kind of has that look to her. It kind of has a film noir actress. She kind of looks like she's from that era a little bit. And maybe I think that was maybe some of her appeal. Until I feel like Danny DeVito in many ways was trying to make this into kind of a modern noir film. And I think he succeeded quite well in that respect. I think maybe where he had some trouble is what we talked about before too, was maybe some of the acting. His own appearance, in his own film maybe hurt his performance. I feel like maybe the performances of the of Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas maybe weren't as darkly humorous as they could have been. They were just maybe dark, and I think maybe he could have maybe kind of impacted that with his direction a little bit. As far as The Money Pit, I'm not sure that there's anything that really stands out very much to me from a directing standpoint. There's not really any, particularly notable cinematography. That the performances are pretty good. I mean, but you've got Tom Hanks, and he just kind of knew what to do. I didn't feel like, but there were some scenes that were edited really well, though, like when he falls down off of all of the scaffolding and all that kind of thing. It's like some giant human Rube Goldberg machine and it's really edited together really well. So there's like all this chaos, but you can still kind of see what's happening. So I feel like there's some scenes that are well edited, but I'm not sure that the directing really stood out to me in particular. Tom seemed to disagree with that, though.
I totally disagree with it. I thought the staging and planning of the slapstick stuff that they did was great, and I'd credit Richard Benjamin for that. I think it was this is actually the category I'm going to have the most trouble with, because I think the just the choreography of getting all of that slapstick and just letting it play out. I mean, and being able to basically follow the actions, almost like a fight scene with some of them. I thought it's just
like when the stairs fall down.
When the stairs fall down, that's
a good one. That's what I'm talking about. That's good editing there for sure.
But I think that Danny DeVito's War of the Roses, it seems like he really wanted to have a lot of fun with it and try some things. I know this wasn't his first movie, because he did Throw Mama from the Train before this, and we did that one, I think, at one point. But I think he really tried to have some fun, like you said, with the camera angles and the lighting, and
even a vertigo effect at some point.
Yeah, and I just it's part of me thinks it's good, have fun, try some new things and that kind of thing. But there's also kind of this feeling like a first time film director thing where, just because you can, maybe you shouldn't, because it's a little distracting. But I at that point of the movie, I was kind of just looking for something to cling on to, and so some of his camera work and composition stuff, I was kind of enjoying that, because so many of the other things had taken me out of the movie. But so I kind of wonder, is it the choreography for the slapstick stuff, or Danny DeVito trying out new things wins the category for this one?
Yeah, I did find the one thing I think that stood out to me that I found the most, I guess, jarring or difficult was at the end of War of the Roses, when they're running around and Michael Douglas is boarding up the windows and she's loosening the chandelier and setting the traps. There's all these like really weird close-ups and like through peepholes and dark shot. Like, it's really, I do not, that entire sequence, that montage it's just not well done. And that may be a contribution to some of the editing, but some of the shots are just really weird. And experiment, go crazy. It just seemed odd to me for a lot of that. I don't know if we get into a lot of the producing with directing, but I think it's interesting that some of the connections with these movies, you have the three people that have been in two other movies together, Jewel and Isle and Romancing the Stone, and then you have James L. Brooks as a producer, who then has Dan Castellaneta in it and ends up becoming Homer for him for writing The Simpsons. And you have Steven Spielberg, who produced Money Pit, who ends up working with Tom Hanks many times over and ends up, directing him. So I don't know if that's a knock or anything else. I just think it's very fascinating how, we as directors, a lot of times, or writers and actors, we will pick people, our friends or people that we've worked with, and we resume those type of activities when we're shooting a film. It's a lot of times the same cast or the same crew. And I think it's interesting that even happens in Hollywood. And so I thought that was kind of fascinating. My only thing about Money Pit is I would say, yeah, maybe it is the editing, because that entire chimney scene that's being completely themed by the orchestra using Dianetic soundtrack was fantastic. Like, it, all of his spots were hitting the orchestra that was playing and cutting back and hitting all of those it's gold. I mean, that entire sequence is just gold. And just some of the tips or little tricks and stuff they did to have the house and the antics and the, just the random ha-ha moments. I would like to say that potentially have something to do with the director and the writer, when she goes into the kitchen and there's 10,000 cables coming down from the ceiling, makes absolutely no sense, but is a great. That moment is really funny when they're fighting and all the construction workers follow them around the house like an audience. That's brilliant. It looks so good, and you never lose sight. He never breaks 180. He does a fantastic job of keeping that as a normal conversation all over the entire broken house. It's just incredible. So yeah.
It's kind of funny you mention it because I guess I didn't think about it before this, but both of these movies really are kind of throwbacks in the way that Money Pit is very much like a Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin style movie with all the physical gags and set gags and things like that. And Where the Roses is, as we've mentioned, kind of noirish in its look and storytelling. It's kind of interesting. I didn't really think about that or notice that the first time I was watching it. But yeah, I think Danny DeVito did a fine job. This is early on in his directing career. Throw Mama from the Train, a movie like Money Pit, for whatever reason, when I was a child, that terrified me. Don't know why. I just thought the idea of a house falling down around you was really scary. I'd have been really young when this movie came out, so I never watched it. Not Money Pit, Throw Mama from the Train scared me because the old woman was just like my grandma. Mike can attest to that. And she scared the living hell out of me. So, yeah, I mean, the directing is serviceable in both movies. They're both very different in what they're trying to accomplish. And we've talked about kind of what that's like directing yourself on set when you're acting. And Danny DeVito is skilled and experienced enough to do that, as long as he's got someone who won't blow smoke up his ass and be like, Danny, that's really bad, or you should do that again, or whatever. You hope that something like that would happen. But yeah, the physical stuff is done really well in Money Pit. I can't argue with that. And the kind of set pieces which you're going to get from having a movie like that are really well done. Some of it is a little over the top in the choices. I get that you want to portray that, it's no fun to work with contractors, but they don't show up in your house in monster trucks looking like some sort of alternative band of weirdos and circus folk and just destroy things. Really kind of odd choices in places there in Money Pit. Makes me feel like sometimes I think if you watch movies, especially in the 80s and 90s, and I don't mean anything derogatory by this, but if someone makes the movie and they're not familiar with American culture, or maybe they're not from America, they think like, yeah, this is the way it works in America. All these crazy people and crazy things, and you're just like, just a step too far. And it's just like, this is kind of weird. And the guy who made Troll 2 was trying to make a good movie. He just didn't understand. But yeah, I don't know. Nothing really stood out in these movies as like, wow, this is really fine directing. But people definitely were, like Andrew said, they got the idea that they had known quantities on their hands, and these are people I want to work with over and over again. And I would say it served all of them well over the long haul.
I absolutely hated the cartwheel down the steps on War of the Roses.
Yes.
I think that was, there's a lot of bad parts of the movie, but that part I was just like, even if she was a gymnast when she was 30 years younger, I don't think that it just I don't know.
Totally agree with you.
I don't know who saw that and went, yeah, that'll work.
War of the Roses isn't quite as bad as Birdemic, so you got to give it at least a hookup for that.
Oh yeah. I mean, it had some redeeming qualities, but I'm not. I don't know. I might watch Birdemic again one day.
Wow.
I've never seen it, so I've got something to look forward to.
You need to watch Birdemic.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you don't feel obligated.
And the
Thanks, Gabe, for being honest.
Well, I'll let Gabe finish out this category.
Oh, I don't know that I had a lot of extra stuff to add to the category. yeah, I think we can probably go to the vote if we're ready.
Okay. Well, I just want to chime in real quick. I totally agree with Tom on the director just letting the scenes play out in the money pit. Like he just let them work. He was like, I have these two actors. They're going to do this. I'm just going to let it play out. Then I'm going to go in and get my coverage, which is kind of standard practice for comedy. But it also takes a lot setting up, the human Rube Goldberg machine, as you put it, Gabe. And, the stairs, especially when she comes and stands on his fingers. Like, it's just great.
The little chef kiss at the end.
And but I want to say, War of the Roses, I think, because I wasn't that into the story like Tom was saying, I was trying to find something to keep me into it, and I really liked some of the cinematography choices in that movie. I liked the shafts of light on the eyes. I liked the split focus use, when they're sitting at the dinner table. I loved the opening credits with just the sheets and the different gradients of white and gray and black. Like, I thought that was really well done. And, I know Danny DeVito probably had some input on how he wanted things to look, but, hats off to that cinematographer. I thought there were some really well shot scenes and some really well lit scenes. And I'm not saying the whole movie's like that, but there's a lot of standouts for me.
But does that even push that foundation closer to us talking about how film noir? Because those are very stereotypical.
It's very film noir. It's
those are techniques and styles.
It's very Brian De Palma as well. Like, there were a lot of Brian De Palma like shots in there, and of course he grabs from film noir. But anyway, I don't have a say. Let's put it to a vote, Tom or Gabe, whatever your name is.
Yeah, I think that mostly because of the editing, which I attribute largely to the director as well, but not entirely, of course. I'm going to go with the Money Pit.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Money Pit too.
All right, Andrew.
Also going to go with Money Pit.
And Kyle.
I don't want to be the only War of the Roses guy here. I didn't like it either, guys. Trust me. Yeah, I'll go with Money Pit on this one.
Okay. According to director Danny DeVito, now this may explain some of your feelings towards this movie. According to director Danny DeVito, the first assembled cut of The War of the Roses ran 3 hours and 4 minutes. It was then cut down to its final length of 1 hour and 56 minutes. Some of the deleted scenes can be seen in the trailers and in the deleted scenes montage on the laser disc and the special edition DVD.
3 hours?
Yes. So I think that explains a lot of maybe we would have seen more of them being horrible to each other while they were married. Like while the kids were growing up. I don't know. Maybe it's just him cutting off more heels.
Oh my God, it would be so slow.
Yeah, it would be so slow. Co-owner of the house, Miss Ritter, was apparently absolutely shocked to see her home being semi-demolished. Reportedly, director Richard Benjamin persuaded her to appear in the movie's closing scenes after the house had been fully restored by the production.
You gotta be real trusting.
Yeah,
that would be so hard.
So there's always one thing that I always tell people. They're like, "What's one thing I should know about, movies and everything else?" And I always say, "Do not let people film in your house. Do not let a production crew into your home at all."
How as a director, or a producer or anybody trying to pitch this, how do you go to a homeowner and say, hey, by the way, we're going to demolish the inside of your house.
Well,
but we will put it back together better than
Right.
it was when we're done.
Right.
Trust us.
Right.
If your house sucks, then you're like, sure,
Yeah.
free homemaker.
Go ahead.
But if you like your house, boy,
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Nope.
Mm-mm.
Accidents happen, and there's a lot of equipment that gets moved around. Yeah, it's pretty rough. All right. Finally, the fourth and final round.
For real this time?
For real this time. The other time
All right,
was just
so-
a preview.
Can I go?
Go, Tom.
Oh.
Go.
Well, I don't have a whole lot to say. Okay.
Okay,
First
thanks,
of all,
Tom.
Look, there's so many songs from 80s movies. I mean, Back to the Future and everything else. I don't know if there's a more 80s song than the Money Pit song.
Oh, God, yeah.
Stephen Bishop's The Heart Is So Willing. Parentheses, the Money Pit theme song. Just in case
The
nobody.
dumbest name for a song I've ever heard.
It is.
Oh.
It's weird because part of me wants to just really hate the song, but it's catchy as hell. And I think of it like when I think of the Money Pit, the first thing I think about is the song. It starts and the Universal logo comes up, and then it, that synthesizer, kind of titters, and you're just like, oh, it's the fucking Money Pit song. But then the song's over, and then they like incorporate it into the score over and over again, which was annoying. But so I'm kind of on the fence. I think I hate the Money Pit song. One of the big issues with War of the Roses for me is and I mean, I'm very lucky. I haven't dealt with a lot of divorce in my life, so I don't really know what it's like to be in a house where two people hate each other that much. And that's one reason why I don't think War of the Roses was made for me to see. I don't think it was. I think when they made it, I don't think they ever thought that I would be someone that would enjoy it. I think people that have been through that, and obviously not to that level of violence, but I think that there are people out there that find some joy or get some humor in this when they've lived with someone like that. But for me, it didn't connect with me at all. And for me, it kind of felt like a revenge snuff film. And it was interesting because, we picked these two movies because there's the kind of the theme of the house and these two people, and obviously they both end in very, very opposite directions. But there is this, there's just this idea of just like holding on to the house, and it's funny. It's that holding on to the house is what tears the roses apart. But in Money Pit, it's what brings them together, which I think I don't know. I love that we paired these two movies up because I love when we do movies that are thematically like very similar, but then end up in very different places. The other thing is that War of the Roses and Money Pit, and I didn't think about this until I had finished watching them today, but the escalation of the escalating disasters in War of the Roses and the Money Pit are very similar. That they're just like, it's just constantly in both movies, it's constantly bad thing, worse thing, and it just keeps going up. And in one movie, the couple's able to get past it, and the other one, they're clearly not, which is too bad because I really wanted the roses to fall for each other. Oh wait, they did. It was a long way to go, wasn't it? Oh, don't groan.
About
It
30
was
feet.
a long ways ago, about 30 feet.
Yeah, that was a long walk for that joke.
Yes.
Although, I have to say that it's one of the few movies where that outcome was perfect for me because I wanted them to both die. It's one of very few movies where I wanted the protagonists to die, and it happened. Although I wasn't entirely sure that they had died because they both had this little last gasp. And she had her last little moment of just absolute cruelty where he tried to...
Oh my God, I laughed out loud at that. Like, I physically laughed out loud when she threw her.
So I wasn't
hand off of her.
100% sure that they had died. at the end, and until later, until after that. But I actually that was kind of the outcome that I wanted for them. They both became so awful that I didn't really care to have them continue.
Yeah.
So can I give you a fun fact about that? This is one of those random facts I know. The LD50, which is the height at which 50 out of 100 people will die from a fall, is 40 feet. So they had a good chance of surviving.
I'm guessing landing on the crystal chandelier, and all that metal probably didn't help their chances, though.
I'm sure it didn't help, but I don't know.
Again,
I was surprised they died. I was.
Oh.
If they didn't have kids, right, it would have been better. They shouldn't have shown they had kids. Yeah. That makes it worse.
Don't worry about the kids. Like, their son went off to Notre Dame and did some very big things.
and the kids look like they were done with it as well. So
yeah, they didn't much care for your parents either. So
yeah, they couldn't wait to get out of there. I thought this is a weird technical thing, and I did watch it with headphones on, but I felt like the audio in the Money Pit was freaking horrible. Like
it was really, yeah.
And I've shot in a big giant house. It fucking sucks. There's echo, and you need to get the microphones as close as possible. But how do you do that when, you're shooting from the ground floor up 20 feet, and you can see everything? And I sympathize with it, but I think they were there was no budget for ADR on Money Pit. They're like, it's echoey. It's a big house. Who fucking cares?
Mm-hmm. Boy, oh boy. There are some things in these movies that I felt were so quintessentially 80s. And, sometimes I'm so nostalgic for that because it was I spent, my earliest 7 years in the 80s, and in the 90s was still very much ruled by the stuff I loved when I was a kid. And there are some things that I think, like, that can stay in the 80s. And movies like this, they can stay in the 80s. We don't need these anymore.
That's funny because
we don't need to make these.
Because War of the Roses came out like 3 weeks before the end of the 80s, in the last month of 89. And it really did kind of sum up that materialism and that, that fighting over things that was so big in the 80s. But 90s were better, right? We got MC Hammer taught us to just pray and not touch things.
So I think we mentioned earlier that there were some kind of cringy moments, probably more in War of the Roses than in the Money Pit. But I was wondering what some of those moments were that you guys thought were a little bit cringy. We're looking at them from a different perspective nowadays. What kinds of things, like, did you feel were like, maybe like, oh, that would never fly today, that's not appropriate?
She locked him in the sauna.
Yeah, she basically tried to commit murder. Yeah,
mm-hmm. She ran him over with her car, which, granted, Mike had mentioned was humorous, but again, attempted murder, and there was physical abuse. We've talked about pushing each other down the stairs. Like, he pushed her down the stairs and then looked at her and went, "Okay, well, good night."
Right.
Like, oh my God.
I feel like that's.
She did do a cartwheel, yeah, sure.
Wait, she did a cartwheel though, and then she fell at the bottom of the stairs?
Yes.
So what's
and got all those
sure.
And got all the bruises on the side of her and on her arm too.
And didn't use that. Didn't go to anybody. That's what's weird, right? Is they started abusing the hell out of each other, and no one ran to the cops and was like, "Hey, she would have lost the house so fast."
Yes,
because I think she's the first one to escalate everything. He should have just been smart and been like, "Hey, I've been abused and my property's been destroyed." So, and she'd have been moved out by the end of the week.
When he comes down to the big dinner she has planned, I'm like, oh, well, fuck you then. You're not going to win either. So
yeah,
he's like, you had the upper hand.
But he threw it away.
I'm sorry, but that was the funniest part.
But again, on the fish was my favorite scene.
I will say, technically, there's nothing illegal about pissing on the fish in his own home. Like, that wasn't illegal, technically.
The thing that got me was the note that he wrote to her when he was having the heart attack. Like, I think a lawyer would be able to say, this was written under duress, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
you can't really say that he was of sound mind and body when this was happening. Like, that stuck out to me, and all the attempted murders, of course. But I wanted to take something back to Andrew when he's talking about the contractors, and there'd probably be lawsuits. I say you got a 50-50 shot of finding contractors that will say 2 weeks and never show up.
Well, that is true.
Especially like the last few years have been pretty rough for me to find someone to do something that I need done that I don't know how to do. And
Well,
yeah,
you'd have a hard time finding a contractor actually commit to 2 weeks on anything.
oh well, that's true too.
But
Yeah, my sister-in-law just got something done at her house. She's a realtor. She was flipping a house. She just got something done 1 year late
Yeah,
Wow.
than when they said they were going to do it.
Wow. Yeah,
Jesus
so
Christ.
that's kind of interesting too. Do you guys have any house remodeling horror stories?
we
that
don't
could
have
maybe make
long
one of
enough
these
in this podcast.
That's a whole different podcast.
Yeah.
Remodel smack.
Yes.
No, but-
remodel smack.
You know, our house was built in '83, and there's constantly shit going wrong with it. And you know, we're looking at remodeling 2 of the bathrooms upstairs this summer, and I watched this movie, and I'm just like, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you
makes
watch
you
a movie like
hesitate.
Money Pit. There's also that. Well, it's not that bad. You know, it could be a lot worse.
Could
so.
be worse. Yeah.
I also think the other thing that aged badly is the idea of naming your band Meryl Streep as a bad idea. I think that's a great fucking name.
It is now. Yeah, it'd be a thing now.
Yeah.
That was so weird, though. The people he surrounded himself with in his business, like his main client is what, like a 10-year-old? And
Yeah,
then,
what was he supposed to
I
do?
don't understand
10-year-old, the Richie Rich kid.
I
Yeah.
don't understand. And the idea that he would say, like, I'm not going to like you anymore if you don't loan me this money.
Yes.
And the kid's like, all right. I'm like,
Yep.
what is going on?
Okay, so
my favorite-
that was
my-
before its time.
Yeah.
That would have been like saying, I'm going to unfriend you on every social media network.
My favorite line that kid says is, "Are you going to let my mother do that by herself?"
Yeah.
Oh, God. What a little shithead.
Oh my god.
I made roast tonight. Ooh, that sounds good. He never eats.
I think
I want 100 more.
More
of
like
these.
I want 100 more just like him.
Oh God.
I love that White Lion is in Money Pit too.
Yeah.
Before
Before they
their
were-
album.
Before they were
Yeah,
big, yeah.
'cause
I
Oh,
love it.
God.
it's
Is
not
that
even
who
all
that
their-
is? That
Yes,
was
it's
White
White
That was
Lion.
White
It's not
Lion.
even- It's
Yeah.
not
I did
even
not
all of
realize
their band members.
I feel like I would be the one to know that, but I did not realize that's who that was.
Like they shifted band members after that.
Yep. Don't
Yeah.
you dare. Don't you dare say anything else
Oh,
after
nope,
that.
sorry.
Andrew Zumwalt.
Sorry.
Stop there.
Oh, here we go.
I'm nope.
Black Sabbath.
I didn't
you,
say
Tom.
that word.
I didn't say anything.
All right. Let's put it to a vote, fellas. Tom.
I gotta go with Money Pit because it makes me feel good and sad and laugh.
Andrew.
I'm going with Money Pit because I kind of want their house at the end.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Kyle.
Man, you guys gotta quit making me vote for War of the Roses. I can't. War of the Roses was too long. It's 2 hours long. Jesus Christ. Yeah, Money Pit.
All right.
At least it's shorter.
And
Could have
Gabe.
been over 3.
Yeah. Gabe.
Oh God, what a movie! A 3 hour. Oh God.
Gabe.
Well, yeah, I really did not enjoy watching War of the Roses, and I actually was laughing out loud at the Money Pit, so I'm going to have to say Money Pit.
It's very relatable, right? Like
Yeah.
we all own houses. We know what it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just felt like the War of the Roses. Just the characters didn't have any redeeming qualities. You weren't really rooting for anyone, and it just kind of left you empty.
Right.
Whereas Money Pit was just kind of fun. Sure, it was a bunch of just silly slapstick stuff, but it was fun.
Well, I think you said it the best when you said you kind of just wanted the two main characters to die. You were just ready for them to die. You just wanted to be done.
Yes, that will end this story altogether.
In August of 2009, Richard Shankman held his ex-wife Nancy Tyler hostage for over 13 hours in their South Windsor, Connecticut home after becoming obsessed with the War of the Roses, basing some of his actions on the movie itself. Fortunately, Tyler was able to escape, although Shankman burned her home down. He was tried and given a 70-year sentence.
Oh my God.
The leader of the cross-dressing group Cheap Girls is Leslie West, one of the great hard rock guitarists of the 1970s from the band Mountain. The band White Lion performs twice in the Money Pit with a lineup that was before their debut album. The bass player joined Black Sabbath between this movie and White Lion's first album.
Huh.
And then,
what a step up.
This one's just for me because I grew up on this. Phil Collins was tapped to compose a song for the War of the Roses, eventually becoming Something Happened on the Way to Heaven. By the time Collins finished recording, the offer of composing a song for the film had been taken back. Instead, the track can be found on Collins' 1989 album, But Seriously.
That's his best album, too.
I would agree with that.
That's a really great album.
All right. Recommendations. Yeah, let's do that. Start off with Andrew.
Oh, crap. I totally forgot to do those this week. I was so excited about the damn movies. Okay, so I'll do an easy one because I really enjoy Tom Hanks, and it's probably one of the fun movies that I enjoyed with Tom Hanks growing up. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it.
Don't you do it.
It has John Candy in it.
Okay.
Okay. It has John Candy in it, and it was probably the first time I ever saw a naked woman on screen, and that would be Splash. It's a charming, goofy movie about a mermaid, and you kind of watch it now, and it feels kind of awkward and weird, but it was a cute movie, and I just have fond memories of it growing up. So, Splash!
All right. Thanks, Andrew. Kyle?
So I'm going to recommend a Tom Hanks movie that I just saw in the theaters, and I actually liked quite a bit. It is a little bit sappy and a little bit dramatic at points, and Tom is making a face. Oh, was Tom just stretching his jaw? I don't know. Oh, okay. A movie I saw that I actually kind of enjoyed. My favorite part of it, though, has got to be when he is in a car and his disgraced rapper son's song comes on. That's one of my favorites. You can hear White Boy Summer on the radio. If you go see A Man Called Otto.
All right.
I want to see that.
Thanks, Kyle. Gabe?
Well, I'm going to recommend another Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner, Danny DeVito movie, which we've mentioned several times during this episode already. So I was afraid that this might be recommended before I got to. I'm going to recommend Romancing the Stone. I just remember I was a huge fan of Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was a kid, and I always thought that Romancing the Stone was a lot like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and a little bit more adult in some ways than Raiders of the Lost Ark. But I really enjoyed it. It's fun, exciting, and we talked about the chemistry between Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner in it. So yeah. I'm sure many of you have seen it already, so go back and watch it again and just have a good time. It's a fun movie.
All right. Tom?
So I was going to recommend Glass Onion because it's fucking amazing, but then Kyle, I'm calling an audible. I think you should watch I think you should watch A Man Called Ove, which is a Swedish movie from 2015, and it's like the original that Man Called Otto is based on. And I haven't seen Man Called Otto, full disclosure, but Man Called Ove is amazing. And when I found out they were remaking it, I was very disappointed because I feel like people won't watch A Man Called Ove. They'll just skip straight to the Tom Hanks one. So I would recommend you watch A Man Called Ove. And then if you want to watch A Man Called Otto, you can, or watch Glass Onion. I don't really care.
Thanks for the permission.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
Permission granted.
Mine is also a Tom Hanks film. It deals with some house destruction. It stars alongside Bruce Dern, Carrie Fisher, Corey Feldman, and Henry Gibson. And that is The Burbs. And I'm sure everyone listening has probably seen The Burbs. But if you haven't, go watch The Burbs. It is really, really funny. And it is a classic 80s movie, released in 89. And it's supposed to take place in Iowa. It's a little bit of trivia for you. All right, let's poke the monkey. Find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner, by decision, is the Money!
Yeah, I can't say, there aren't very many movies that I really just leave just completely not enjoying, but I was surprised at how little I enjoyed War of the Roses. I found very little of it to be very redeeming. There are good things if you look, but I just was left flat after watching that movie. I was really surprised. It doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, I think the redeeming qualities of that film are the cinematography and the lighting, a lot of the lighting choices. And I think DeVito telling the story is another redeeming part. But otherwise, yeah, I can show you the dinner scene where he's peeing on the fish. And the very end when she throws his hand off of her, which I thought was hilarious. And that's it. Nothing else.
Yeah, if you show the fish peeing scene to someone, you're like, hey, check the scene out. By the way, there's another hour of shit escalating after this. Right. That's how far it gets out of control. So
we would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on whatever podcasting service you use. It helps us reach new listeners. If you like us, tell your friends. If you hate us, tell your enemies. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. In March, we get wild with 2 documentaries about wildlife. It's Grizzly Man versus My Octopus Teacher. For Tom, Kyle, Gabe, Andrew, and myself, thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
You whore! Sorry, did I peek out?
Yeah,
it was a little hot.
A little bit.
It was a little hot. I should backed up and been like, "You whore!" When we saw this, we would say that. My mom came home from work one day after we had watched it, and she was like, "Why are you yelling 'you whore' all over the house?" Because we thought it was hilarious. I didn't know what a whore was.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.